spiritual awakening and the various stages, as we know, it doesn't have to be linear. So nothing will have to happen in the way that I'm explaining it. We've already covered the chunk of the very initial first stages up until the point where you now form a new personality, a new vehicle through which you perceive your existence, you perceive manifest reality, and are perceived by others. Now, as you're now morphing into this new person and you think, wow, right? So now I'm sensitive to energy, I'm sensitive to things, I'm sensitive to feelings, and you want to be inside nature more, we now enter the next big chunk of the spiritual awakening stage. Now, this is where, right? This is where you will probably go through a very long period of isolation. And isolation doesn't have to take place that you don't suddenly have people to talk to, you don't suddenly have anybody. You could feel isolated even having everyone around you, but the inner world will have literally opened up to itself, to you. So your inner world, which should be the workings of you, for you to understand your factory, the factory of you. Now, this is where you start to want to know more about inner child healing. If some of you have gone through that, you want to understand PTSD, CPTSD, trauma. So many various things happen in this stage, right? Alongside this stage, you might take an interest in esoteric, right? You might take interest in yoga, meditation, exercises. You might take interest in being in nature more, nature spirits. You might take interest in shamanism. So you will be drawn towards whatever it is that is going to facilitate even deeper healing of your psyche. Now, the next stage after this, when you have evolved your psyche and everything, you've understood a lot of the things. And, in this stage is where most of you will suddenly not want to be around the aggressors, right? If you had gone through something that then got you into that victimhood or made victimized you. Now, after this, the stage that we go through, having been through all of this, is where we start to experience this amazing grace, right? We start to experience, hang on, everything that had happened because I chose it. So now this is your third big stage, right? So these are the chunks. Now, in this, you will have realized that it is you who are authoring all of this, and that not only were you authoring everything that has happened this time round, whether it's in a parallel life or whether it's in a life before now, but you will understand that hang on. The way that I am right now on this part, on the board of life, someone else was there as well. So it's like, okay, so the judgment goes away, compassion steps in, right? And you suddenly find yourself almost becoming sagely or saintly, but this is where all of that hurt, or where you felt, I was the victim, or I know, look what happened to me. You're no longer fighting. You no longer feel the need of a boundary. You no longer feel a need to protect yourself. You no longer feel that there are the others and there is you, because now this stage is when you're actually about to integrate the entire awakening. Now, once you have gotten to this stage, right? Now, this is where you will be experiencing very, very altered states of consciousness. This is where you really, truly will be accessing pure consciousness. And this is where the gap between the consciousness at which you were vibrating before and now starts to literally shorten. And you have glimpses of samadhi. So you have glimpses of going into a state of void. There is nothing that is happening in that state. You can find yourself completely sitting, right? Past this stage, now this stage towards your stage, the higher stages, is usually when a Kundalini awakening would have happened, if it hasn't already. Now, this is where everything will be amplified. So if there was any leftover, now is the time when everything will be pushed out of your system The idea being that you realize, wow, wow, I am bound to the extent that I bind myself to any thought, any belief, any feeling, any emotion, to any idea, to any concept that this is who I am or that this is how things ought to be. Now, this is where, folks, when you've gotten to this stage, you are almost absolutely fluid. It's no longer about this is where I draw the line, this is how I want things to be, these are the parameters or boundaries within which I'm going to operate, right? Because by now, you know yourself. By now, you've chosen a vehicle through which to experience yourself, right? And at the very, very, very highest stage now, I'd like to call, because I don't want to call this the last stage, but a stage of many more to come, is when you've now integrated fully a Kundalini awakening, spiritual awakening, and you're now sitting in pure consciousness. Now, this is when, folks, wisdom flows. There's no book, there's no study. It flows, right? When spirit wants to make itself known through you, to you, it just does. Because by now, you're fully receptive. Your antenna no longer have any dust, because the antenna has always been there, right? You are in your full flow. So when there are things that happen in your life trajectory, you just keep going. Everything to you becomes a possibility, and you're now expressing your life in the fullness of life and as an expression of joy. Lots of love. Take care.